The movie kicks off by introducing us to Sid, a high school senior who's mastered the art of being invisible. He's not just unpopular, he's the reigning champion of flying under the radar, and he likes it that way. Why? Because life's easier when you're not on anyone's radar. To maintain his stealthy lifestyle, Sid lives by 3 golden rules. Rule number 1, silence is golden. He believes staying quiet keeps you out of trouble. After all, no one gets detention for saying nothing, unless you're caught sleeping. Rule number 2, blend in, don't stand out. Sid avoids the spotlight like it's a contagious disease. His extracurriculars? Backup roles in school plays, helping out at hockey games, and making cameo appearances on the video game team. Nothing too flashy. Rule number 3, stay as far away as possible from Chuck, the school's resident bully/YouTube thug. Chuck doesn't just torment people, he live streams it for likes. The guy's got a rap sheet longer than the school lunch line, but thanks to his rich daddy, he's untouchable. Sid's quiet existence is supported by his best friend, Jim, an aspiring social media star who thinks Sid's rules are as outdated as flip phones. Jim wants to go viral, Sid just wants to survive high school unnoticed. While they're debating the finer points of life, Sid spots her, Tiff, the girl of his dreams. She's gorgeous, charming, and dating Chuck. That's like having a crush on someone who comes with a built-in guard dog. Sid has exactly one memory of interacting with Tiff, when they were 8 and ice skating together. Now, every time he sees her, his brain turns to static. He can't confess his feelings because, well, she's Chuck's girlfriend, and Sid isn't a fan of hospital food. The duo is soon joined by their third friend, Luna, who immediately starts bickering with Jim. Everyone except them knows they have a thing for each other. Later that day, Sid heads home, where his 2 moms, who are both as sweet as they are nosy, drop some news. He's received a letter from school about the upcoming homecoming party. Sid's response? A hard pass. Homecoming is not part of his blend-in strategy. His moms insist it's a rite of passage, but Sid shuts them down with the classic teen excuse, I don't even have a date. Fast forward to the weekend, and Sid is on a legendary gaming marathon, 72 hours straight, no sleep. By the time he drags himself to school, he looks like a zombie and feels worse than Chuck's victims. His sleep-deprived brain decides it's a great idea to accidentally insult Chuck in front of the entire class. Cue disaster. Chuck reacts like Chuck does, by going full WWE on Sid. The situation gets so bad that a teacher finally steps in, but the sleep-deprived Sid, still operating on 0 brain cells, decides to also insult the teacher. Now Sid's streak of staying out of trouble? Completely obliterated. Sid, the self-proclaimed master of blending in, has officially broken all 3 of his sacred rules. Not only did he speak out in front of the entire school, but he also managed to royally tick off Chuck. Chuck, being Chuck, doesn't just get mad, he gets murderous. He vows to end Sid the next time they meet. Cut to the next scene, Sid wakes up in bed, dazed and confused. Jim is sitting beside him with a smirk, announcing, "You've been out cold for 7 hours, buddy." He also delivers some goodish news. Chuck has been suspended for 2 weeks and is being forced to attend anger management classes. The bad news? Chuck's suspension ends just in time for homecoming, meaning his fists will be back in action for the big event. This sends Sid into full panic mode. Forget homecoming, he's convinced his life is now a ticking time bomb. Frustrated with himself for breaking his own rules, he spirals into a doomsday mindset. The next day at school, he walks the halls like a man with a 2-week expiration date. If I'm going out, he thinks, I'm at least going to have some fun first. His first act of rebellion happens in sex ed class. While a girl gives a very prim lecture about abstinence, Sid, now the king of not caring anymore, stands up and delivers a speech that shocks the entire room. Listen, folks, he declares. Having urges is normal. We're all hormonal messes, let's stop pretending we're not. The room falls silent for a moment before the students start cheering him on. Suddenly, everyone's spilling their thoughts like it's group therapy. Sid walks out of the class like he just dropped the mic. He's as surprised as anyone at his newfound courage, but Jim is grinning ear to ear. Look at you, Jim says, Sid the Silent is now Sid the spokesman. Later that day, Sid gets a mysterious text from an unknown number. It's from a girl who's apparently had a crush on him forever. She praises his bravery in class, and for the first time, Sid feels like someone actually sees him. But life waits for no one, and Sid heads to his part-time job as a pizza delivery guy. After his shift, he sits down with Jim. Sid drops the bombshell, "Chuck's coming back in 2 weeks, and he's definitely going to kill me." Jim, being the supportive friend he is, tries to lighten the mood, but Sid is already planning his grand finale. He decides to create a bucket list of things to do before he meets his maker. The next morning, Sid walks into school with a new attitude. For the first time, he's fearless. To his surprise, the entire school is treating him like a legend. Jim explains, "Dude, you're a hero now. The whole school is talking about you." As Sid soaks in his newfound fame, his phone buzzes again. It's the mystery girl, texting him that she's watching him from afar. He glances around and spots Tiff walking toward him. Could it be her? Tiff apologizes for Chuck's behavior and drops another bombshell: she's broken up with Chuck. Sid's inner monologue is screaming, "Best day ever." She asks if he's planning to attend the hockey game that night, and, feeling invincible, Sid says, "Absolutely." The scene shifts to introduce Eric, the hockey team's star player. Eric's got a lot on his plate, namely, a father who's also his coach and never stops criticizing him. With this much pressure, you'd think he was playing in the NHL, not a high school game. During halftime, the hockey team drags themselves into the locker room, trailing miserably. The coach is already revved up, barking orders like he's running a military boot camp, and poor Eric gets the brunt of it. While the rest of the team tunes out the ranting, Sid notices that Eric looks like he's about to cry into his hockey stick. Feeling uncharacteristically brave, Sid approaches Eric for a heart-to-heart. Eric spills the tea: he doesn't even like hockey. His real dream? Becoming a dancer. Sid, channeling his inner motivational speaker, tells Eric it's totally fine to ditch something he doesn't love. "Do what makes you happy," Sid says. And then, in a twist no one saw coming, Sid offers to sub in for Eric. He sneaks into Eric's gear and steps onto the ice, looking like a terrified penguin. At first, he's as bad as you'd expect, falling, fumbling, and basically turning the game into a comedy show. But then, a light bulb goes off. Sid remembers his ice skating skills from childhood and decides, what the heck? I'm dying in 2 weeks anyway. He starts playing with all the reckless abandon of a man who's got nothing to lose. Sid turns into a hockey legend, scoring goals left and right. The crowd is losing it, and the team rallies to victory. When Sid removes his helmet, everyone realizes he's not Eric, but instead of outrage, they are blown away. Even the coach, normally the human embodiment of a rage emoji, is so impressed he offers Sid a permanent spot on the team. As if that wasn't enough, Sid gets a text from the mysterious girl who compliments his epic performance. Sid is on a roll. The next day brings the student union presidential election, and we meet Megan, the underdog candidate. Megan is hunting for an assistant, but everyone she asks turns her down, either laughing in her face or walking away mid-conversation. Sid, fresh off his hockey high, steps in to save the day. Megan reluctantly accepts his help because, let's be honest, she doesn't have many options. Later, Sid swings by the school's resident pharmacist, a shady student selling drugs in between math classes. Sid buys some, not because he's interested, but because, well, why not? He also learns that Eric has joined the dance team, finally living his dream. Sid feels proud, like he's the Mr. Miyagi of high school self-discovery. That night, Sid continues texting the mysterious girl, still clueless about who she really is. Election day rolls around, and Megan is a nervous wreck. Unfortunately, things take a chaotic turn when Megan, mistaking Sid's drugs for mints, pops them like candy. Realizing she's accidentally gone full Breaking Bad, Megan panics, convinced she's going to bomb her speech. Sid, in a bizarre act of solidarity, decides to join her in the haze, taking some drugs himself. When it's their turn to give speeches, things go way off the rails. Instead of talking about policies, Megan and Sid start freestyling, literally. They rap, dance, and turn the stage into an impromptu talent show. The audience is in stitches, and while Megan's presidential hopes are officially toast, she's the most memorable candidate the school has ever seen. The next day, it's time for the school play. Sid spots Tiff rehearsing with John, another school bully who somehow snagged the lead role. Never one to miss an opportunity, Sid sneaks something into John's makeup box that gives him a glorious case of pink eye. John is sidelined, and Sid swoops in to save the production. He performs alongside Tiff, delivering the most enthusiastic, if slightly awkward, performance of his life. After the show, riding high on adrenaline, Sid asks Tiff out to a party. In the next scene, Sid, Jim, and Luna roll up to Tiff's house, with Jim and Luna still bickering like an old married couple. Sid, ever the optimist, is too busy waving at Tiff like she's the queen of prom. Once she hops in, the crew heads to a party at one of their classmates' houses, ready for a night of fun, or so they think. Sid and Tiff are hitting it off, laughing and having the time of their lives when the party suddenly takes a dark turn. Chuck shows up uninvited, storming in like a villain from an 80s teen movie. Turns out, his anger management course let him out early, because that's clearly a great idea. Chuck immediately demands to know why Tiff hasn't been answering his calls. Before anyone can react, Chuck tries to drag Tiff away, but Sid steps in, gripping Tiff's hand like his life depends on it. Chuck, of course, goes full Hulk mode, threatening Sid with all kinds of doom. But just as things are about to escalate, Chuck's car outside the house bursts into flames, because karma has impeccable timing. While Chuck scrambles to save his beloved car, Sid and Tiff take the opportunity to escape. They end up in a nearby forest, where Sid decides it's now or never. Summoning every ounce of courage, he leans in for a kiss. But Tiff pulls back, looking guilty. Sid, she says, I don't think of you that way. I'm still in love with Chuck. Cue the sound of Sid's heart shattering into a million pieces. He stands there, stunned, as Tiff apologizes for leading him on. To add insult to injury, she admits she's not the mysterious girl texting him, and she doesn't even have his number. Ouch. Crushed, Sid heads back home with Jim and Luna. The next day, Sid, still reeling, messages the mysterious girl, asking her to meet him. She refuses, claiming she's not brave enough to meet him in person. Sid decides he's had enough of living behind screens. He turns to Jim and Luna, delivering an impassioned speech about the joys of the real world. Guys, he declares, there's more to life than video games. Like, actual life. His friends, impressed by his sudden wisdom, nod in agreement. Right then, Sid gets another text from the mysterious girl. He looks around the room and spots a girl giggling while staring at her phone. He approaches her, but she bolts like a sprinter. After a comically awkward chase, he finally catches up to her. The girl introduces herself as Katie, blushing furiously. Sid, thrilled, doesn't waste any time and asks her out on a date. That afternoon, Sid and Katie head out together, and sparks fly. It doesn't take long before they share their first kiss and officially start dating. Meanwhile, Jim, out walking his dog, runs into Chuck and his goons cruising around in a car. They convince Jim to hop in and pitch him an idea for a cool video. Jim, dreaming of YouTube stardom, agrees without hesitation. The next day, Sid arrives at school and senses something's off. Everyone's glaring at him like he just kicked a puppy. One of the students shoves a phone in his face, playing a video. It's Jim, visibly drunk, spilling all of Sid's secrets, his bucket list, his drug escapades, the whole 9 yards. Sid's jaw hits the floor. Jim, what the heck, he mutters under his breath, realizing his best friend just handed the entire school a front row seat to his personal drama. He then goes to his room and tries to reach out to Katie to apologize, but she refuses to forgive him. The next day, Luna visits Sid at his house and pleads with him to forgive Jim, explaining that Jim didn't mean to insult him. The homecoming party is approaching, and Sid is reluctant to attend, but Luna encourages him to be brave like before. She also admits that she was the one who set fire to Chuck's car. After much convincing from Luna, Sid finally decides to attend the party. On the day of the homecoming party, Sid and Jim finally reconcile. Sid then approaches Katie, who refuses to speak with him. Still, Sid apologizes, explaining that he never meant to hurt her and confessing that she is the only girl he's ever loved. Realizing that Chuck could kill him at any moment, he says goodbye and walks away. Later, Chuck arrives at the party and violently attacks Sid, causing him to lose consciousness. After some time, Sid wakes up in the hospital with Jim at his side. Jim shares that he too was attacked and starts telling what happened after Sid lost consciousness. In a flashback, we see that Jim also attacked Chuck to defend his friend, and then Luna joined in as well. After this, Eric began beating his father and stating his dream to be a dancer. The party descended into chaos as different groups began fighting with each other. After this, Sid leaves the room and finds the hospital full of the rest of the students. Meanwhile, we see that Jim and Luna have finally expressed their feelings and are dating now. The rest of the students are all relieved that Sid is still alive after all the beatings, but he ignores everyone else and goes to Katie, asking her to forget everything that happened and start afresh. She agrees, and the two begin to dance together in the hospital hallway as the movie comes to an end.